All right, my friends, it's another Monday in space. And so I'm here to bring you your astro weather forecast for the week. And it's kind of a spicy one this week. We got a lot going on. It's pretty front loaded Monday through Friday. Got a lot of snakes on the plane, but moving into the weekend, things peter out a little bit, but we got a lot going on Monday, a lot of personal planets changing signs, and a lot of contact with Pluto over there at 3 degrees of Aquarius. So there's going to be some energetic shifts this week, possibly some intensity. So do what you can to regulate yourselves, to stay safe, to stay connected, to stay in community, and try and yeah, just really take care of your hearts, take care of yourselves this week. Good morning, my friend. And yeah, welcome everybody. My name is Joan Emerson Bell. I'm an astrologer, tarot reader, licensed mental health counselor. I do astrological coaching, and sometimes I do a astrology themed radio show called the Melee Report. I didn't have the mojo to get one out this for this Capricorn new moon, which occurred yesterday. Happy new moon, everybody. Hopefully, I will have the space and spaciousness in my life to be able to crank one of those out sooner rather than later. But, just doing the best that we can with what we got in these trying and turbulent times. So, yeah, if you're interested in getting a tarot reading or an astrology reading, you can hit me up on my website, campwizardcamp.com, or find me on Instagram at Blind Stallion Space Wizard. You can just DM me and we can find a time to talk. Also, I'm going to be co-facilitating a dream retreat with the brilliant Sarah Janes. That's going to be going on in May. We're going to the temple at Delphi, where they have the prophecies that are much written about in Greek mythology, and doing a bunch of other fun stuff. If you are interested in checking that out and joining us, it's going to be a blast. And you can go to the dreammysteries.org to check that out, or follow and contact Sarah Jane's Dreaming on the Instagram. But I'll put links to all that in the show notes, and there's links to that in my bio if y'all are interested. Okay, I think that's all the announcements to get us started off. And I just gotta say, I cannot believe that I pulled this together because it has been a busy week. I don't know how y'all are feeling out there in TV land, but it's been pretty full on. And I'm kind of surprised that I was able to pull this one together. But, this is my Saturnian commitment and a responsibility that I've taken on. So neither rain nor snow nor sleet nor hail nor large workloads nor chaos in the collective will prevent your weekly wizard from fulfilling his weekly round. So there we go. We are looking at this week in space from January the 19th, 2026 to January the 25th of 2026. And like maybe we're almost done with January, which feels like it's been like 6 months long already. So yeah, just hold fast, my friends. All right, and away we go. Starting off Monday, today, January the 19th, we have the Sun in Capricorn sextile Neptune in Pisces at 29 degrees and 50 arc minutes. Excuse me. So a sextile is a supportive aspect. It is one of the weaker aspects, but it is supportive nonetheless. It is an aspect of communication and collaboration, but it takes a little work to activate. So it's important to notice with the sextile what is arising in the self, and if you feel called to, maybe taking some action around it. And let me just frame it like this. Neptune is a dream or an idealized vision. And the sun coming into this sextile with Neptune, we have this opportunity to kind of shine a light or illuminate this dream, which I think is kind of interesting to think about because, when we're in the dream world, it is like full on, things are happening. We're trying to run and our legs feel all weird. We're trying to drive a car and it's flying. And then we wake up and we come into day consciousness and the sun shines on it and the dream just sort of dissolves. And we're like, oh, that didn't make any sense. But in the dream logic, like everything made perfect sense. And so there's this interesting relationship between this Neptunian dream and being able to kind of shine a light or illuminate that and being like, what is this dream? While still being able to hold it lightly and not try and, because I think when we apply logic to a dream, it sort of turns it to sand and it slips through our fingers. So, can we hold the dream and be able to explore it or experience it in our waking life without it sort of dissolving and melting away? When we apply the rationale of the waking life to the sort of rich texture of the dream. And the sun is our sense of self. It is our ego identity. It is our unique individuality. It is also what we aspire to in the kind of inner wisdom that burns bright within us. And I think in this sextile, there's this interesting opportunity for the kind of collaboration between that inner wisdom and maybe the vision or the dream that it kind of activates. And so there's kind of this ability to access some form of communication between the vision and our sense of self or our inner authority or that inner wisdom that the sun represents. Mm. Even in these difficult times, I think it's incredibly important to dream, maybe more so now than ever, and to kind of feel into that vision that we hold for the future. What do I want this to look like? What do I want my life to look like? What do I want life on this planet to look like? What do I want life in the collective to look like? I think it's important that we allow ourselves the possibility of something different and something better that we can begin to work to create. And the sun is a symbol of coherence. It's the center of our psyche and the center of our solar system. And it's what all things kind of orbit around. The sun is what holds everything in its gravitational field, and it maintains the order of the system. And so with Neptune, there's kind of a dissolving influence, which might help to dissolve some of the outdated ideas that have become perhaps the cohering principle in our daily orbit. I think this is on the collective level and also on the individual level. And as these principles dissolve and their grip sort of loosens, what is the vision that we would like to replace it with? What is the dream we would like to live into, that we would like to orient to? What is that new vision that we would like to work to create? That new vision that we want to work to aspire towards? Today, January 19th, we are celebrating Martin Luther King Day. And as I was putting this together, looking at this transit, made me think about the I Have a Dream speech, which was delivered on August 28th of 1963. And during that time, Saturn and Neptune were in within orb of a square, which had perfected, I believe, in August of that year. And in the I Have a Dream speech, Dr. King lays out a vision or a dream for the future and for America, and I think for the world, that is still not come to fruition, but is still or can be still an organizing principle and something to aspire towards. He had a vision of freedom for all people and dream of unity and mutual respect and camaraderie, which would replace the hatred and oppression that people of color experienced and are still experiencing today. And in these times, we see this increase of hate, division, racism, see the rise of fascism and the forces of oppression trying to instill fear in people, to disrupt communities and families and connections. And this shit is horrific. Let me tell you what. Yet, even in these fucked up times, it is possible to hold a dream for a better world, a more ideal system, a greater vision of connection and harmony, similar to the dream that Dr. King spoke about, free of the forces of oppression, racism, and injustice, these forces who walk in hypocrisy and feed on hate and death. Is it possible to allow ourselves to dream of a world of equality and mutual respect? Is it possible to hold a vision that honors life, even in this time where these forces of death seek to paralyze us with fear? Neptune can want to kind of disassociate and to escape in the realm of fantasy, but can we stay present in this moment? Can we stay embodied and hold both the stark reality of this challenging moment in history while also constructing a vision of the world that we would like to live into? This transit is not necessarily about taking action. I think that comes later. This transit asks us to feel into this vision that we are cultivating, this vision that we are allowing ourselves to dream. And I think being able to kind of feel into this dream, into this vision, provides us with the mental pathway that helps us to work towards this goal instead of becoming overwhelmed by the fear of the moment and giving up our power through escapism or disassociation. Instead, can we hold our ground and orient ourselves towards what we would like our world to look like instead of settling for this toxic nightmare that has been dreamed for us by those in power, those who seek to control and who feed on death? Can we break that spell and dream a dream of life? And so also Monday, January the 19th. And Monday, there's a lot going on. Also, I just want to let folks know that I didn't get to every single transit this week. I will acknowledge them. I don't know if I'm going to talk about all of them, but it's pretty full on. So, excuse me. Also, Monday, January the 19th, right after the sun comes into the sextile with Neptune, they leave Cardinal Capricorn and enter into Aquarius. So, um, glad that you made it. I hope you had a good conversation in Costa Rica, Gina Maria. Welcome. So we have the sun entering Aquarius, and last Saturday, Venus entered Aquarius. And then this week, we have the sun, Mercury, and Mars all entering the sign of Aquarius. So big shifts in space going on this week as all of these personal planets shift into another Saturn ruled sign, but a kind of different flavor of Saturn in Aquarius. And yeah, this marks kind of a big shift of the energy of the personal planets and the personal planet stellium from cardinal Earth of Capricorn into the fixed air of Aquarius. And so in Capricorn, we are learning the structure and the rules of that structure so that we can operate within these systems. And we can set up a good place for ourselves within the limit of the system or the situation that we find ourselves in. In Aquarius, we're stepping outside of the known structure to gain a different perspective. Aquarius is stepping outside of the container of how things are to review these systems from a different and often distance perspective, which allows us to bring a more critical eye to the existing structures. And this is incredibly important. The distance perspective of Aquarius allows us to come up with our own kind of blueprint for how best to structure the reality that we are living in. And the traditional ruler of Aquarius is Saturn, who also rules Capricorn. But these are two different ways of doing Saturn. In Capricorn, we are looking at how we operate within the existing structure, and in the sign of Aquarius, um, is we are looking at how we operate outside of that system and kind of reviewing it and saying, okay, like this isn't working. Oh, I can see why that doesn't work. Oh, I can see why this traffic pattern is all messed up here. Are there ways that we can correct it? And so we with Aquarius, we are really like taking a distance perspective to see if we can rewrite the blueprint of how things go. And the sign of Aquarius is the archetype of the water bearer. And in Roman society, the Aquarii were enslaved people or servants who would get water from outside of the city and carry it up into the apartments for the Roman citizens. And the Aquarii were some of the only people who left the city, and thus they had a different perspective on how the city functioned. They were also marginalized and they were outsiders, so they had different perspectives on how Roman society functioned. And this is part of the Aquarian archetype. The outsider, the exile, the rebel, the person who doesn't fit within the Capricorn structures of society. And so these folks had a very different perspective on the predominant culture, which allowed for innovation, adaptation, and updating of the current system to improve its functioning and overall quality. So in Aquarius, we are focused on how we can create new systems. And with Venus, the Sun, Mercury, and Mars all entering into the sign this week, there will be a real shift in energy from what is happening to how to create change. Venus is what we love and what we value and what we find beautiful. So there may be shifts or some perspective on those systems, on relational systems, on value systems, on the way that we appreciate or engage with aesthetics and beauty. The sun is our sense of self and how we shine our light into the world. And so we may take a different perspective on what is the best way of doing this. Oh, I've been doing this in this way. How long have I been doing that? Is that really still working? Is there another way that I could approach this? Mars is the actions that we take. What is the how am I taking action within this structure? Is this working? Is there another way that I could approach this? Can I go around it? Can I be outside of it? Can I just walk away and do something different? And Mercury is the way that we process and communicate our experience. And so, again, taking that Aquarian observational view and getting maybe a different perspective or a bigger picture to notice how things are connecting and how things are actually working. So this week, all of these planets will be shifting into Aquarius and looking at existing structures from a radical new perspective and working to change these existing structures. First in ourselves, ideally, hopefully, and then in the world around us to create something a little bit more aligned with the ideal that we hold for how things could be. Little callback to that Sun sextile Neptune. Instead of just accepting how things currently are. And I think this energy is incredibly important for the moment because the structures that we are operating in seem pretty broken and kind of miserable. And if we are able to get a little distance on this, instead of getting locked into it and being like, this sucks, I hate this, this is terrible, which all of these things may be true. But if we can step outside of that and be like, okay, what can be adjusted? How can I adjust myself? And operate in a slightly different way or from this distance perspective get some new information on what is going on and how things could be adjusted to become maybe more in line with the ideal. And so, again, all of these planets are shifting into Aquarius, but I kind of just front loaded it right there. So, you can apply those to Mercury and Mars, both moving into Aquarius later on as you see fit. So, also Monday, January the 19th, we have Venus in Aquarius, who Venus just entered Aquarius last Saturday, coming into a conjunction with Pluto in Aquarius. This is going down at 3 degrees and 19 arc minutes. And so I just want to point out also one of the things that we are going through as the planets have been moving through the late degrees of Capricorn and into the early degrees of Aquarius. All of these personal planets, this whole personal planet stellium, Venus, the Sun, Mercury, Mars, they've all gone through sextiles to Neptune and Saturn. Some of these sextiles will be wrapping up today as Neptune is posted up at the very last degree of Pisces. And, so everybody's moving through this sextile to Saturn and Neptune and the building Saturn-Neptune conjunction. And I think we're getting a lot of flavor of that as we look out into the world and possibly as we look into ourselves. And then as they all move into Aquarius, they're all going to meet up with Pluto and go through the initiation of Pluto, Lord of the underworld. And so Venus leading the pack will be the first one to come into this conjunction with Pluto on today, Monday, January the 19th at 3 degrees and 19 arc minutes. So Venus is planet of love and beauty and values. And Pluto is an archetype of power, as well as death, rebirth, and transformation. When Venus meets up with Pluto, what is highlighted, one of the things that is highlighted is the power of love to transform. And love can bring life, and it can also shake us to our very core. Aphrodite has qualities that are utterly terrifying. It is not just like roses and doves. It is also, the power of love, which can be incredibly fearsome. And Aphrodite did some like unsavory things in her time in the pantheon. And we also have Inanna, who is the Mesopotamian precursor to Venus, Aphrodite, and also her chthonic counterpart, her sister Ereshkigal, who is queen of the underworld. And Inanna and Ereshkigal are twins, and they are sort of unified in some ways. Inanna being the queen of heaven and earth, and Ereshkigal being queen of the underworld. And in the Descent of Inanna, um, she comes into her full power by descending into the underworld, being stripped of all of her power objects, confronting her twin sister Ereshkigal, who kills her and hangs her on a hook on the wall. And then Inanna is rescued through the assistance of the Galator, who are these non-binary beings that are made by Enki from some dirt under his fingernails because Hanky's cool like that. And they enter into the underworld and they show Ereshkigal some compassion, which is like kind of a beautiful plot twist right there. And so this story speaks to a very component of Venus meeting Pluto. When the goddess of love comes into connection with the lord of the underworld, we can we can be given access to the shadow or the unloved parts of ourselves. And these parts tend to have a lot of power. And oftentimes they are unconscious and operating under the surface and in some ways running the show. Is the fear of being hurt, the pain of being rejected, the terror of being vulnerable, as well as the parts of ourselves that we dislike or even downright hate that oftentimes are driving the bus from the depths of the underworld or the unconscious. And so with Venus here conjunct Pluto, there's an opportunity to kind of turn towards these fears and unloved parts and show them some love, acceptance, and compassion. And in doing this, we gain a lot of power. In the myth of Inanna, it is what is able to bring her back to life and allow her to return to her throne as the queen of heaven and earth after completing her initiation in the underworld. And so, another underworld myth that I want to touch on in honor of Venus conjunction with Pluto is the myth of Orpheus and his quest to retrieve his bride, newly deceased bride, Eurydice, from Hades. And so, in order to do this, Orpheus, who is the greatest musician of all time, uses his power of music, which, by the way, is a Venusian art, to charm his way into the underworld. And he plays a song for Persephone, who is so moved by his song, he allows him to bring Eurydice out of the underworld, just as long as he doesn't turn around. And so Orpheus is leading Eurydice out of the underworld and hears howling of dogs and screaming and gnashing of teeth and all manner of terrible sounds. And he's like, nah, just eye on the prize, eye on the prize, eye on the prize. And he comes to the mouth of the cave of the underworld and sees the light and it shines on him. And then everything goes silent. He loses faith. He doesn't trust that Eurydice is still behind him. And just as he is about to step outside, he turns around and Eurydice is pulled back into the depths of the underworld. And so Orpheus is now cut off from Eurydice, cut off from his love, cut off from access to the underworld, and he is bereft. He refuses to play music anymore. And he meets his somewhat glorious end, when he is ripped to shreds by Maenads, who are the followers of Dionysus, because in some tellings, because he has refused to use his gifts after his heart was broken. And the Maenads are the ecstatic followers of Dionysus, who is a god of death and rebirth, and is a god of the earth, and is about ecstatic connection with nature, as well as the regeneration of life in nature. And by Orpheus refusing to use his gifts and choosing to stay mute, he has sort of cut himself off from the flow of life, has denied the world his music out of personal pain. So Venus conjunct Pluto is a reminder of the terrible power of love that can both lift us up and also destroy us, can help us to enter the depths of the soul and into the caverns of the underworld, and can also leave us shattered and mute. But this transit is also a reminder that even in the heartbreak, there is rebirth and renewal. And in a lot of ways, Orpheus sort of replaces Dionysus as a god of rebirth in mythology. And so, uh, like Orpheus in the myth goes into the underworld and returns change. And in his dismemberment by the followers of the god Dionysus, there is a change that occurs. This dismemberment is reminiscent of Osiris and Dionysus himself, who are both vegetable gods and spoke of the death of the world during the winter and the regeneration of life in the spring. And Orpheus could make trees sing and stones dance with his songs. This is a power that exists not just in him, but I think in all beings, to be in harmony with nature and to be in harmony with the flow of the world, and to use our voices to contribute to the song of life. This is also the power of Venus and Pluto, that even in times of heartbreak, sorrow, grief, and fear, the ability to remember the song of life and to lend our voices to that harmony. Orpheus reminds us of the power of music, poetry, and creativity, and the beauty that these arts hold to be able to describe the world and also to transform the world, as well as the ability of creativity to alchemize and transform our pain and suffering into something beautiful that brings us back into relationship with ourselves and with the in relationship with the harmony of the world. And in the end of the tale, Orpheus's dismembered head was able to deliver prophecy. It was able to express the future and speak the truth. This again speaks to the power of regeneration, and that from death and disconnection also comes the power to be transformed and to be recreated. And in these dark times, there is access to the power to create and to recreate. And this power to recreate is very important. There's a power in using our creative abilities to edit and re-narrate our stories, to develop a more useful and generative version of the story that we are living out and living into. And through the descent into the depths of ourselves and learning to hold that fear and grief with compassion, we are granted access to that power, the power to prophesy, the power to create the future. It is in the depths of the self that we learn the harmony of the song of life, which grants the power to make the stones and the trees dance. It is this power that is needed in these dark times. So, also Monday, January the 19th, big day out there in space. Um, we have a very interesting configuration going on. We have Saturn in Pisces, sextile Uranus and Taurus at 27 degrees, 33 arc minutes. We have Mars in Capricorn, trine Uranus in Taurus at 27 degrees and 33 arc minutes. And then let me give you the last one after I scroll down. And then we also have Mars in Capricorn, sextile Saturn in Pisces at 27 degrees and 33 arc minutes. So what we have here is Mars. um, Sorry, what we have here is Saturn sextile Uranus, Mars trine Uranus, and Mars sextile Saturn. So we have this interesting kind of harmonious, flowing relationship between Mars, Uranus, and Saturn. And I'm interested in this because there is a lot of energy here, and these are supportive aspects, but I don't know how supportive it's actually going to be. I feel like this transit is a little sketchy, especially the Mars and Capricorn, trine Uranus and Taurus. So let's get into it. So, although a trine is a supportive aspect, a trine is a collaboration, um, and kind of a conspiring together. And Uranus is sudden and unpredictable change, and it can occur in flashes and eruptions and explosions, which again is like very unpredictable. Mars is action and conflict. Mars is hot and passionate, and it can burn and scorch. It can inflame and boil. And so when these two energies come into strong connection, it can result in sudden inflammatory eruptions or explosions of conflict and violence. Mars is a god of war, after all, and Uranus is a signature of sudden disruption and unpredictable events. And so Uranus kind of needs to disrupt the established forms, and they enlist in this trine, they enlist Mars's anger and desire for action. So Mars is sort of like the fuse, and Uranus is like the dynamite, you know. And, and this transit can result in actions that create explosions and unpredictable outcomes that can upend established orders. And this could turn out to be pretty unstable and could result in violence. So, just something to be aware of this week. And I'm not saying this to freak people out or alarm anybody. That's not my purpose or intention here. And I don't think that's actually very helpful. And I think that there's enough fear in the world that I don't really want to add to it. And also, it is important to be aware of the potential for people to act impulsively and for tempers to flare and anger to boil over. And this could result in violence today. So, just something to be aware of. And things feel incredibly unstable and are very charged. And there's the potential for actions to cause eruptions and explosions during the first part of this week. So it's important to be aware of the unstable energy that is occurring so we can kind of prepare our nervous systems and work to keep ourselves and our communities and our friends and our loved ones safe. So, a mitigating factor for this Uranus Mars trine is that Saturn in Pisces is sextile to both Mars and Capricorn, which is a Saturn ruled sign, and Uranus and Taurus. And this can be helpful because Saturn provides some containment and some limitation on the wild and explosive energy of the Mars Uranus trine. Saturn is structure and restriction and limitation, which may help to kind of minimize the effects of that Mars-Uranus collaboration. However, however, Saturn can also be a signature of external authority and oppression. And one of the things that we have seen again and again this year is that ice, which is the definition of a force of oppression, has continually escalated situations and created violent and unsafe environments, which has led to incredibly unstable and unsafe situations for people and communities. And one way this could play out is that the Saturnian forces of oppression could cause situations to escalate until things erupt into violence. And I hope that is not the outcome of this. And I hope that that Saturn's power limits the violence and the explosive potential of the Mars and Uranus trine. And also, I hope that some real fucking change occurs because this is unacceptable. On a positive note, the Mars Uranus trine can inspire us to take action to create change and to break up old patterns. This energy, if used skillfully, can help us to use our willpower to break old habits and to disrupt unproductive patterns, as well as to shift old cycles. There can be a drive to find excitement and novelty, which can help us with neuroplasticity and to create new connections in our mind and potentially in our lives. This energy can be used to shake us out of the rut or to break down barriers and blockages. If used skillfully, this transit can be really helpful. These energies are unconscious, they can kind of hijack us and cause us to act impulsively, which may not lead to the best outcomes. And one last thing. This relationship between Uranus and Mars can be pretty accident prone. So be careful and maybe don't be doing any extreme sports or going bungee jumping over the next few days. Try and tap into the Saturn sextile and know your limits and act responsibly so you don't hurt yourself or somebody else because it's pretty hard to contribute to the long-term collective good if you're in traction. All right. Um, oh shit. And Gina Maria saying that there's a big deployment of ice in Albuquerque. That's fucking terrible. That sucks. Okay, moving right along. Finally, we made it to Tuesday. Um, we have Mercury in Capricorn, sextile Neptune in Pisces. Mercury kind of following suit behind the sun and completing that sextile at the threshold, the very edge of Capricorn and Pisces. We're not going to talk about that because we still have a lot of stuff to go over. That moves us to Tuesday, January the 20th, and we have Mercury entering Aquarius. I kind of talked about that a little bit earlier, which moves us to Wednesday, January the 21st. Now we're getting into the good stuff. We have Mercury in Aquarius conjunct the Sun in Aquarius at 1 degree and 36 arc minutes. And this is about 2 degrees away from where Pluto is posted up at about 3 degrees of Aquarius. And so this is Mercury's superior or direct conjunction with the sun, meaning from our perspective here on Earth, the sun is kind of between us and Mercury. And I think about this like Mercury's information or the messages it has to share are kind of mediated and delivered to us through the sun. And this could be the Mercury message being filtered down through the sun's light. We can consider the information that's contained in a ray of light or a wavelength of light, and the ways we are able to absorb that information through our eyes, through our skin, and allow ourselves to process that information on maybe a more somatic level, maybe on more of a soul level than a cognitive level. And just see what you learn from standing out in the sun today and soaking up the sun's light for a little bit. And if we consider the sun as our sense of self and our ego identity and the principle of coherence that I talked about a little earlier, we can see what information becomes available today that helps us to kind of update our sense of self in the world and the ideas or beliefs that we orbit around in our internal lives. This is occurring on the this is occurring in the radical sign of Aquarius, which is about standing outside the existing order so that we can observe how things function and work to create new systems that may lead us into a new way of being. And so with the Sun Mercury conjunction, there is an invitation to step outside of ourselves for a moment and to just observe ourselves and to gently question what are the principles of coherence in my psyche which are holding me in orbit? We can ask ourselves, who am I? Who even am I? Or who is even thinking these thoughts? And that can help us to just get a little distance, to just observe the programs we are running and the structures that we are living in and that we have created for ourselves on an internal level. And through this observation, we may get some information on what might need to change or be updated in order to be in better alignment with who we truly are, that sort of sun's inner wisdom, instead of operating within a system that may have run its course and no longer serve us in the ways that we have needed them in the past when they were first implemented. And a lot of times, the ways that we live life come in kind of unconsciously from our early childhood development, from difficult experiences. We come up with survival and safety strategies that work for a time, but our mind is like, cool, got it, like, bam, locked in, We're just doing this. And this is an opportunity with this conjunction to step outside of that and be like, okay, what is this program? Do I still need this? Do I still want this? Is this still functioning? Is it still helpful? Okay, if not, are there ways that I can begin to shift this? And so, again, this conjunction is happening just 2 degrees away from Pluto. And so there may be a Plutonian component to this conjunction. It may reveal secrets or hidden things that live in the underworld of our psyches or in the underworld of the collective. This conjunction may grant us access to power, but also to the shadow parts of ourselves. Aquarius can be pretty detached and intellectual, which can be helpful for clear thinking and observation. However, if we start to notice some information that carries a emotional charge coming up, see if we can just hold it gently and turn toward it instead of detaching or going into thought or story or any of these sort of air sign qualities, which can be beneficial, but also can sort of separate us from our felt experience because this emotionally charged information is a gift and it leads us deeper into the work. And it leads us deeper into the work, which is really necessary to be able to shift ways of being in ourselves and how we relate to the external world. So, also Tuesday, January the 22nd, um, we have Mercury in Aquarius conjunct Pluto in Aquarius, following after Venus, which occurred earlier in the week. And this is occurring at 3 degrees and 24 arc minutes. So, the day after Mercury conjoins the Sun, they begin to move ahead of the sun. And they're picking up speed and they begin to lead the way. Here they move into a kind of guide role, leading the sun through the zodiac, at least until they station retrograde on February the 25th. And then they meet back up with the sun for their inferior conjunction or cazimi or retrograde conjunction on March the 7th. Um, Great question. Cosmic Cousins, the brilliant Jeff Hinshaw, asking me if I have any thoughts on Aquarius being a sign associated with astrologers. I mean, I think Aquarius, I'm gonna pause and just answer this because I like this one. I think two things about this. One, I think Aquarius is looking at systems functioning, and it's like stepping outside of like, okay, this is my normal terrestrial life, and getting an observational view on the sort of map or the lay of the land to be able to edit the blueprints or work with the blueprints from a different or distance perspective. And I think that's exactly what astrology is. It's like, okay, this terrestrial life that I'm living, that I'm all up in, if I step outside of this and look at the map of the sky or the map of the chart, what do I see here? And what is this system? And what are the ways that I can work with this kind of map overlaid on the reality of my experience? And how does this give me a different perspective and also give me a little bit more agency to make choices and changes in my life? So that's one of the ways that I think about Aquarius being associated with astrology and astrologers. I think the other thing is the sort of more modern idea of Aquarius being ruled by Uranus, which I understand. I don't use in my practice, but Uranus also being a sign or a planet or an archetype of new ways of thinking, sort of out of the box thinking, future thinking. And I think these are all kind of components of astrology and the astrological community of kind of radical new ways of thinking about life. Yeah, and I've got Jim's Jams saying, yeah, it also makes sense with Uranus co-ruling and being the higher octave of Mercury, Hermes, messenger of the gods. Yeah, exactly. Okay, so um, coming back to Mercury leading the way, coming into conjunction with Pluto. So the first encounter that Mercury makes after the conjunction with the Sun is their conjunction with Pluto. Mercury and Pluto have kind of a special relationship. Mercury's role as the psychopomp, they bring souls into the underworld. And they are also, in very special cases, allow able to allow souls to leave the underworld and guide them back up. So Mercury is the only one of the Olympians that is able to move freely into Hades and into the underworld. And Mercury, in their role as psychopomp, moves from the super consciousness of the Olympian pantheon down through the normative consciousness of the terrestrial world, what we are experiencing right now, and into the unconscious of the underworld. They're able to share information between these realms and deliver information between all of these places. So Pluto, Lord of the Underworld, kind of hides secrets and treasures. They keep the dead and the things that have been buried. But it's important to remember that buried emotions never die. There may be some information or some emotions that have been buried deep below the awareness of our daylight consciousness that Mercury is helping us to retrieve and to bring up into the light of day so that they can be honored and properly laid to rest. There may be secrets that come to light under this transit or buried information that emerges. This may happen on a personal as well as on a collective level. I also think that there is a component of this transit that makes me think about all of the people out there observing ICE operations and filming the unconstitutional actions of law enforcement. And this is Mercury in Aquarius in action. Citizens and members of the collective exposing the rot of the system and abuses of power through the mercurial medium of their phones. And I think that this is an important tool of resistance. And it shatters the narrative and manufactured lies of those in power when we can actually see with our own eyes what is actually happening as masked and armed police are rampaging through cities and terrorizing communities and kidnapping people. It's fucked up. And it's a really bad look. And having the images beamed out into the collective really dismantled the Trump administration's narrative that ICE is trying to make people safer, which, like, obviously is total fucking bullshit. So, for those of you who are helping to document what is going on the ground, keep it up. And for those of you who are not, that's all right. And there are many ways to help create change. And we all get to find our role in this sort of new shifting of the collective consciousness. And, just keep doing what you're doing and help in the ways that you can. And for everyone out there, this is a really intense time. And again, just do what you can to take care of yourselves and to stay regulated so that you can help support others and stay with the struggle. Okay, so also, Thursday, January the 22nd, we have Mars in Capricorn, sextile Neptune in Pisces. Again, Mars moving through that last kind of initiation at the edge of Capricorn and Pisces. And then Mars will enter Aquarius on Friday, January the 23rd. Okay, last transit of the week that I'm going to talk about. Friday, January the 23rd, we have the Sun in Aquarius conjunct Pluto in Aquarius, and this is occurring at 3 degrees and 25 arc minutes. So we had, Venus, then Mercury, then the Sun, and next week we will have Mars. And so initiation is a key concept with Pluto. It is the death of the old self and the old identity that allows us to be reborn as a new version of ourselves. Traditionally, initiation involved a ritualized experience of death. It was a contained experience of death. In this process, old, old outdated identities would die so that a new self could be born into the world. But according to Francis Weller, initiation was never about the individual. The old individual or the child self would be laid to rest so that an adult self could be born to take their place in community and to be of service to the larger collective. And this wasn't just the community of the human world. The initiate would be reborn as kin to the mountains and the rivers and the landscape and the animals who populated these places. So with the Pluto-Sun conjunction, this process is about the old separate ego dying and being reborn into right relationship with the Aquarian collective that we are all embedded in. And the feelings that arise now and the changes that they call for may be difficult to sit with. But this is part of the process of transformation and initiation that Pluto calls for. And the birth of something new is as beautiful as the death of something old is fearsome. I think this is important to remember because we get used to the old patterns and it can be really painful as we try and as we are asked to let them go. And, we are kind of conditioned to strive for the light. And the sun is a symbol of the light, the unique individual self. But with this Pluto conjunction, we are kind of pulled into the underworld. And we are called to release a old ego identity, which may have made us special and unique, but may have also separated and isolated us from the larger wave of life that we are participating in. With Pluto conjunct the sun, we were given access to the alchemical nigredo, which is an eclipse of the familiar self. It is a time of darkness and of decay. It is a loosening of the fixed sense of identity. It is a call to develop a more intimate relationship with the dark places in our soul and our unconscious material. And we meet a different self in the underworld. This self is accustomed to the dark and has not been swept up in the pursuit of the light. When you're in the underworld, the natural inclination is to look for the exit. But instead, can you move closer to the heart of darkness? Trying to leave too quickly deprives us of the work that's being done in the dark caverns of the soul. And so, how can you maintain faith in this process? And what power is available to you in the dark? This is about learning to see in the dark, which opens us to a new way of seeing in the world. In his book, The Black Sun, by the Jungian analyst Stanton Marlin, he says, whoa, sorry, my stack of books just collapsed. Okay, staying with the darkness allows something to happen that escapes us if we are hasty. If we resist our natural tendency to take flight before painful experiences, we can deepen into the dark aspects of the unconscious, which is necessary if we're going to make contact with what Goethe calls infinite nature. Turning towards such darkness requires a willingness to stay with suffering and to make a descent into the unconscious. And this is a time of change. The Nigredo, the Sun conjunct Pluto in these Plutonian times. But this is not a change of addition, but a stripping away of the layers that have been built around the true self. This is a process of stripping away and rotting and death. It is the road of negation so that you can be more authentic and shine your light in a new way on the other side of this. But this is a process of learning to become familiar with the dark and to embrace the learnings and the pressures that live at the subterranean level of the self. So, on a collective level, the sun represents leadership. And with this transit, we see what in alchemy is called the black sun or the soul niger, the dark destructive side of the sun, which is playing out in the collective through inept and destructive behavior of our leaders. And Stanton Marlin writes about this saying, in von Franz's description of Sol Niger as the destructive side of the sun god, reminding us that Apollo is the god not only of the sun, but also of mice, rats, and wolves, and that the dark side of the sun is demonic and his rays burn life to death. He is a god without justice, and he brings death to the living. She refers to that aspect of the Sol Niger where the sun is so hot it destroys all plants. Marlin goes on to say, for von Franz, the shadow of the sun, uh, the shadow of the sun as a god without justice, which is death for the living, reflects wrongly functioning consciousness that rejects the dark side of God. She states that if consciousness works according to nature, the blackness is not so black or so destructive. But if the sun stands still, it is stiffened and burns life to death. When the psyche loses its natural rhythm and fixates into complexes, the unconscious becomes destructive. And this is the space that we find ourselves in under this black sun, where the heat of leadership is actively destroying all life. We are caught in a complex. The refusal to acknowledge the shadow on a collective level has caused that shadow to seep out into the streets in the form of deputized Proud Boys who are running amok and causing chaos and destruction. The call from this conjunction is to turn towards the dark and to bring the consciousness back into right balance. While no individual can do this for the collective, we can do this work in ourselves. We can turn towards that darkness that Pluto offers and learn to touch it, maybe even to embrace it. And as we do this work on an individual level, it eases the load that the collective is asked to bear at this moment. And I think what this time requires is people learning to be with themselves and our own fear, rage, and grief, while also showing up in whatever our individual capacity is to contribute to collective change and to hold that vision of what is possible on the other side of this collective Negredo and being able to take the little steps to begin to form that dream and to bring it into reality. And with that, my friends, that is all the astro weather that is fit to print. Thank you so much for tuning in and lending your attention to me for this short span of time. I think attention is incredibly valuable and precious and powerful. And I feel honored that I get to hold this for a minute. And I hope something that I said is helpful to somebody out there. Yeah, I'm gonna wrap this up and I'm gonna stay on the Instagram for a minute more and see if there's any comments or questions and read through some of the comments that I may have missed. All right, my friends. Yeah, be well. And until next time, be good to yourselves, be good to each other. And as always, may the force be with you. Bye now.